Mattea Merta is my guest. We're going to be talking about the UN, sex-selective abortions in Canada and elsewhere in the world. Mattea Merta is a... Thank you, Jay Baty, for the intro. Is the Global Policy and Advocacy Advisor at Campaign Life Coalition and a pro-family rep at the United Nations and involved with conservative Christians on campus. Mettea, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Jim.
Awesome. How
are you?
I'm okay. It's some strange times, and I don't think I'm special in the fact that, people are suffering right now. I equate it to a blanket of pain that's covering everyone. Some people react differently to having internal pain or physical pain or mental or emotional pain or spiritual pain or lack of connectedness. So I'm feeling it like everyone else is. Maybe not as bad as some. I don't have children, that kind of dependency, but I'm doing okay. It's a strange time, and I will tell you, my heart absolutely breaks for the children walking to school by themselves, covered in a mask over their breathing apparatus. It just breaks my heart. And the weather's starting to break. I was seeing 100% compliance outdoors alone by everyone walking. And yesterday, a girlfriend of mine who is kind of like, not my girlfriend, but one of my best friends, we went to the beach last night for the sunset. There's a poor, lonely soul girl walking in the water of the beach in her, it's not the warmest out, but mask on.
No.
And I'm just, my heart breaks for the stupidity of humanity. No one will do any research. No one's looking at any data. They're just doing what the government tells them. And when I see children mask, I want to, it makes me violent. Not literally, but it makes me rage. And I'm sensitive to that. So that's a little bit about where I'm at. How are you doing anyway?
Great. For the most part, again, just like you, it is a strange time. But things are good. I cannot complain with the situation I am in. I'm living, I'm breathing, I'm eating. I get to have a warm shower every day. So I have clothes on my back. So and I'm with family now. I was separated from my family earlier last year rather, when the pandemic first broke out, and I was stuck in the US for a couple months. So I'm grateful to be with my family. It taught me the appreciation of that connectedness, of having physical touch and human conversation, not over a phone, but face to face. So I'm grateful to be with my family. I just came out of a UN commission, the most feminist UN commission that ever happens, truly, probably worldwide. So that was something else. I can definitely delve into that later on, but preparing now for the next commission, which is at the end of April, which is the Commission on Population and Development. Very, very draconian and a kind of a creepy commission, but nonetheless very important to be at. And then we have the March for Life, which is happening in Ottawa in May. So I'm also helping out with that, going to be one of the hosts and hosting lots of interviews at this point. So lots is going on. But more importantly, I'm getting to reconnect with old friends and make new ones along the way. So this period of time has been really interesting. It's shifted a lot of people away from who they used to associate with. A lot of division has occurred, and so new friends are always being made. And so I appreciate that. Fellow freedom fighters, essentially, who love life and love humanity enough to stick their necks out there. So I've been connecting with a lot of them in Saskatchewan and Alberta and all across the country. even globally. So it's been an interesting time.
Now, previously, I've confessed to you that I'm a recovering leftie. I've been red-pilled over the last 5 years. My last Green Party election, I think, was in 2016. So that's not a long time to have the new glasses on. I think I've matured quite a bit. I think my opinions are more reasoned and researched than when I was 24 years old and ideologically bound by my body, my choice up until birth. Or if you listen to the guy in Virginia, even after birth, like what, I just can't believe that somebody would have that type of idea. And then so in my slow red pilling, I've come more moderate, more middle, more conservative from the standpoint that I don't think that more gun laws are going to make safer communities. I'm not my body, my choice up until 9 months. And then before I was completely red pill, I realized I didn't know this. Canada doesn't have an abortion law. Well, this is one of the most, now the feminists will say, this is not a political issue. We don't want to talk about abortion. No, you don't want to talk about it because there's no law that stops you from doing anything. And then I get the devil's advocate that says, wow, that late term stuff, it's so rare. It doesn't happen. And then I see your post the other day, sex selective abortions in Canada. No, that can't. I've heard of that in other parts of the world where females are just disregarded. They're not valued. They're not important. And culturally, there are certain cultures that just say, no, we don't want a girl. And I went, oh, man. I've been meaning to reconnect with you because it's about time. Like, I find you really grounding, informative, and I think you provide an education for some people that don't know. So I've come to the position of, I just don't want to see late-term stuff anymore. No. I'm not under the delusion that I'm going to end abortion. Just like we're not going to end poverty or mental illness, or we're never going to stop someone from going and shooting up a school. We're going to have these things that happen no matter what. And so I'm not under the delusion that I'm going to end abortion. I mean, that could be a higher goal, I suppose. But no, I'm not there. I just don't want to see the late-term stuff. And I think that most of us would agree, if you looked at it, the majority middle is about 95, 98%. So we flip-flop conservative to liberal as far as voting patterns. And we share mostly the same values. And I think you can get that 98% of people to agree that, aborting a baby after 6 months should not be allowed. And then, and Crowder does this well, if you're apart up here, then go back to where you agree. Where can we find common ground? And I think that's a point where even the most ardent pro-choicers will say, yeah, the late-term stuff, no, that shouldn't happen. Just like it shouldn't happen after they're born. You should be able to take a life after they're born. But if you listen to Northern, that's, we talk to the mother and we talk to the doctors and we decide what to do after we kept the infant comfortable. For a while. And then just to finish that up, I think the most reasonable people would actually back up to 90 days and go, yeah, if, okay, you want to abort the baby, fetus, as most call it, and that, then, yeah, just do it in the first 90 days and then we don't have any problems. So that's a long way of saying, I don't think I'm going to, end abortion, but I would, why is ending abortion after 6 months so radical and extreme? Oh, it's not.
Well, it's not, but truthfully, so I will tell you a quick little story. At this UN commission I just finished, it was fascinating because in the general populace, I find a lot of camaraderie with feminists who are actually against late-term abortion or sex-selective abortion. But anytime I brought up either of those topics at this commission, I got mercilessly attacked because abortion at the end of the day is what is so intricately linked, according to the small minority who controls the majority, abortion is intricately linked to what it is to be a feminist. And it's the OGs of the feminist movement. That's not what it is, but we're second, third wave feminists. When you're dealing with them, this is the pinnacle of what it is to be a feminist. So when you're dealing with the general populace, they find it extremely controversial in Canada anyway, that we would have zero abortion laws. Majority of people have no idea. They believe that we have abortion, you can only get abortions up until 20 weeks. And some people believe it's only up until 16 weeks. And so there's a huge education that needs to happen across the board when it comes to elevating this topic in the public sphere, because people truly are clueless. I know individuals who up until a year ago who are in my life, until I posted something about abortion, lack of abortion laws in Canada rather, they had no idea. So for me, it's truly been about educating my own circle, my own sphere of influence. But when it comes to individuals, I've worked on Parliament Hill with cabinet ministers. And so when it comes to the political sphere and people telling me, whether they're inside or outside the political realm, that abortion is not political. Well, the fact that we take tax dollars and abortion is paid for by the taxpayers of Canada, that makes it political in and of itself. And not only do we pay for it here domestically, but we're shipping millions. By 2023, we're going to have an annual budget of $1.3 billion just for what they term sexual and reproductive health and rights, which I'll refer to as SRHR, just save a bunch of time. But SRHR encompasses abortion, free and on demand, which means at any point in time during pregnancy, contraceptives, as well as what we deem comprehensive sexuality education, which is very explicit, and we can get into it at another point. But we are funding, our government is funding, which means that the Canadian taxpayers are funding abortion everywhere. And I was in a meeting with Minister of International Development, Karina Gould. I believe it was just a week and a half ago. And an Argentinian individual who's a radical feminist in my eyes, who's very pro-abortion, not just pro-choice, she's very pro-abortion, was applauding Canada for having no abortion laws. And this is what the world is looking at Canada as the blueprint of what we should all be doing globally. And so we need to have no abortion laws. We need to make sure that the taxpayers are funding it. And we need to make sure that this is all about the release that the public is buying, the lie, but the talking point that it's my body, my choice, that it's women's empowerment, and that this is how we achieve gender equality. And so when it comes to Canada, there's so many different things happening. We know from reports that over, I believe it was a 5 to 7 year time frame, that almost 500 babies were born alive post-abortion. So it's a failed abortion attempt on their life. And they were born alive and left to die.
Wow. Now,
and when it comes, and this is the thing, we don't even know the full extent of how many abortions are happening in Canada. Late term, infanticide, sex selective, because doctors, medical facilities, etc., do not have to report their abortion numbers. Now, some do, but many don't have to, like Quebec, for example. So it's very bizarre what's happening. And when it comes to the political sphere, I'm only too acutely aware that individuals within every party are pro-life, but are systematically silenced. And that sounds strange, because when you run for the Liberals or the NDP, you're not allowed to be pro-life, or at least espouse of your pro-life beliefs. But they're there, and they're sympathetic, especially when it comes to sex-selective abortion, which I find is very, people say it's controversial, but it's really not, because it predominantly targets baby girls. It does target baby boys as well, but predominantly girls. And in a society, especially in Canada, with a government who deems itself to be feminist, you would think that you would want to, cut out any discrimination, regardless of its form or where it appears in society. And this is something that we're dealing with in Canada. So MP Kathy Wagenthal from Yorkton Melville, she is a Conservative member of Parliament, but she has sponsored bills like Cassie and Molly's Law, which was not a pro-life bill, but was a bill in which if a pregnant woman was killed, it would be deemed as a double murder. So 2 people die in that case, but the government shut that bill down. And so you can't even get into the criminal code that if you kill a pregnant woman, regardless of the stage of pregnancy that she's at, whether she's 9 months, 6 months, or 3 months, that is still only one death committed. One murder committed. And so MP Wagenthal has now brought up another law, and it's Bill C-233. And it's all about sex-selective abortion. And it's interesting because as I talk to people about this bill, and I hosted an event at the UN just this past week with her a part as the panel, people were shocked that this even happens in Canada. Nonetheless, that we don't have any kind of regulatory protections for girls, predominantly for girls, from being targeted for annihilation. And so as we talk about these subjects more and more, we're informing people. And that's the whole point. My reach is primarily into the political sphere, but also I'm getting more and more into the grassroots, which I love the grassroots because they're where the real work gets done. Everybody thinks it's all the work needs to be done in the legislative buildings through policy, and that's very important, and I understand that. But when you actually understand that you have to influence culture first, and that's where the policies come from. Because nowadays, parliament, governments are basically run by lobbyist groups. Like if we're honest with ourselves. And working with my counterparts in Washington, D.C., this happens all the time. Policies are crafted by lobbyists, not by the officials themselves. It's a rare day when it happens out in reverse. So we're all about educating culture. We're all about reaching out and getting people, just like you didn't know about sex-selective abortion, and yet it's very prevalent. Reggie Littlejohn has this amazing group. She's the only individual I know of that has a group that actually goes into China and helps widows, very elderly widows, but also women who want to keep their babies, regardless if they're male or female. But if they get a test back that they're having a girl, they're most likely going to abort. Now, China no longer has a one-child policy, and that's kind of been swept under the rug as if they don't have stringent policies on limiting their population still. They still do. They have a 2-child policy. And so what happens is sex-selective abortion is actually amplified in their culture, because if you have a baby girl first, then you are going to want a boy. Or if you have a boy first, you're going to probably want another boy child. So it doesn't mean that sex-selective abortion is cut out of the equation. In fact, it's actually amplified through a 2-child policy. And the brutality of what happens in India, and now India has prohibited and criminalized any kind of action to commit a sex-selective abortion. And I applaud them in that. But there needs to be stringent enforcement efforts of that. And that brings us back to what MP Wagenthal is doing. So her bill targets primarily physicians who would knowingly commit a sex-selective abortion. Because you have to sign off, you have to have documentation. And so many people ask, well, how would you enforce that? And so I would encourage anybody asking more questions to go and peek at her bill. And she has lots of information, lots of talks have been done with her on that. But we need to, if we're really going to be a society in which values men and women, if we're really going to be a society which elevates gender equality above all else, because that's seemingly what feminists in our government want. It's not just about equal pay, it's about making us the same as men, which is nowhere near what a true equality is. That's scary to me.
We're not equal, for crying out loud. Stop pretending we're not.
Nor do I, as a woman, want to be equal to a man. I want a man to be stronger. I want him to have different capabilities than me. If we're all the same, we're just one huge blob of nothingness. Mm-hmm. Like, we're just all doing the same things. We're never going to progress as a society. And if we want to progress, if we want to see human rights upheld, if we want to see true equality achieved, we have to put in place policies and inform the culture, the general populace, of what equality actually is, because the small minority that's controlling the majority right now sees equality as sameness. And we have to get that message across, because I actually want policies that foster my God-given abilities as a woman and your God-given abilities as a man. And for those capabilities to be elevated, not diminished, so that we're pounded down into the same flat pancake, and we can't ever encourage each other or challenge one another. Because that's, if you are in a marriage or if you've been in a relationship, you understand that a healthy relationship, you're going to challenge one another based upon the things that you might see in your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, girlfriend. Heck, I do it with my brothers all the time, where there's something that needs to change so that they are better at being a better version of themselves, because that's going to impact positively in their sphere of influence. And so if we don't have that understanding as policymakers, or even as the general populace, then we're just going to keep feeding this perpetual cycle of equality in the form and terms of what the small minority believes it to be. So that's my rant right there. But I do value a lot of the work that's being done in Canada with regards to many groups and individuals even sticking their necks out and being willing to stand up for truth, or what true equality is, with what authentic empowerment is when it comes to women and girls. And those voices, now that there's a threat, there's always been a threat, but people are just seeing it because the curtain's being pulled back. Mm-hmm. And so I value the fact that there's many people who are willing to sacrifice so much in order to educate, because that's the battle we're in right now.
Okay. Yeah. Two things. With this whole shout your abortion thing,
Yeah.
It makes me think of, I'm not comparing women to dogs, but you take young puppies from a mother, she mourns.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's not a buried denial of mourning to come out and be so prolific and so adamant about shout your abortion. And I'm not sure that works for everyone, but I truly feel that if you take a living being from a mother that is, growing that being, that there's going to be emotional repercussions. So when you comment on that, and also, I wonder, do you ever have success at pointing to the hypocrisy of the feminist that is in favor of my choice, and not seeing the hypocrisy of murdering, killing, ending the life of women? I equate it, and this is, not for shock value, but the same people that preach pro-choice are demonstrating out front of Marineland against animal captivity. I can't get that. Like, how do you I'm against animal captivity too, but I'm not, I don't have the hypocrisy of saying, we should end babies whenever you feel like it. So two parts, are you ever successful at getting through to people and pointing to the hypocrisy? And isn't it natural that mothers are going to mourn the loss of life? And do you think that that's what brings them so adamantly to this place of don't take away my rights,
Yeah. So for the first question, there is a lot of mourning, a lot of women. It's been proven that suicide increases, depression increases, having different eating disorders, they start to occur when women do have abortions. And that truly for me breaks my heart, because I know many of these women, young and old. And that's why we as the pro-life movement, we actually value women enough to say, even if you have an abortion, we still see you as a whole person, but we understand that you don't feel that way because you've been put on antidepressants, you're anorexic now, and it's very visible that you're hurting. So let's get to the root issue of why you're hurting. And that's why we have set up so many post-abortive healing centers and retreats like Rachel's Vineyard, for example. And we want to see women flourish. We want to see families and men flourish. And so it is true. Yes, there's a lot of grief that happens. But a lot of that, like you said, it is shoved down. When you're trying to express guilt, sometimes people express it in different ways. Not everybody's going to go I'm going to go and shout about my abortion because it traumatized me and it hurt me. I know a woman a young lady actually, I won't give her out her age, but she was very proud of her abortion. And she went out to many rallies in support of having full and free access to abortion. And it wasn't until about 6-ish years later that she was having a conversation with another young pro-life woman, and she realized that, wow, like I have been out shouting about this. I've been so proud about killing my own child because it wasn't my child. And now I actually need healing, but I recognize that now. And she's sorry that she ever even maybe encouraged other young girls, young women to go and have abortions. And so it is true. Just like if I'm a Christian, how I deal with sin, I run to my Father, to my God, and I repent. But if I don't do that, I will try everything to suppress that feeling of guilt until I get to that place where I know that I can find restoration and healing. And so that's how I'd answer the first question is yes, people do unfortunately shout their abortion because they are guilty. They feel that guilt and shame. But there is healing for anybody watching this. There is healing, restoration that can happen. And for the second question around making any headway with feminists, yes. The ones that I deal with on a regular basis who also deal with work at the UN like I do, they're very difficult. They're extremely difficult to deal with because they have completely bought in the lie that abortion is what makes me a feminist. Being pro-abortion is everything to me. Even they elevate that above their label of feminist.
So their identity is wrapped up in that one issue only. Without that issue, their identity's gone. They have nothing.
Exactly.
So that's why they cling to it so much.
Because that's the equator, right? That's what makes them the same as men. Because when you have free and full abortion on demand, you can have casual sex. And it doesn't matter. It really does matter because you're taking into account, you don't take into account, rather, when you're having casual sex, that you might end up being pregnant and as the woman, and you have to carry that child. So in order to achieve equality, we should have the ability to have that casual sex and then to eliminate the product of that. So it's something that you brought up animals, for example, the same individuals who are shouting their abortion, who are very pro-feminist, are out there chanting, save the whales, save the dolphins. And that's something because that's when what we're seeing really is a byproduct of what's happening in the school and the education systems and how humanity is painted as evil, as bad for the society, as bad for the planet. And we need to save the animals. So animals in turn have been humanized and humanity has been dehumanized. And that's something that's yet another reason why I tell people you need a homeschool, because you don't even know the extent as to why children are, I just had a parent come to me, a mother and a father. They came to me and they were, Mattea, I don't know what's going on with my child. They're talking about, basically gave all the talking points to their parents one night at dinner, and the parents were just dumbfounded because they didn't understand where this was coming from. They never taught their child this, but it was all indoctrination from the school system. And so this extends beyond just, Greenpeace. This goes all the way into raising little pro-abortion advocates. And that's what the education system is doing nowadays. So we have to help people understand, even when it comes to late-term abortion, that's the same child if that child was say 10 weeks old, 20 weeks old, 9 months old, that's the same child that you're killing regardless of the stage in which it is being murdered.
Its potential is the same too. The potential doesn't change from 1 day to 9 months. It's still a potential life to be great. And we're killing geniuses and really powerful women. It's true. Like, look at, for example, I know this is a male example, 2 male examples I'll give, but there are females as well. Justin Bieber, his mom was encouraged to have an abortion. She almost had an abortion. Wow.
As well as Mozart. His mom tried aborting him.
Wow.
She took the tea, she tried it, and because she didn't want to have this child, which turned out to be Mozart. And people mock me all the time for using these examples, but I'm telling you, who are we aborting? If you're a woman and you're considering abortion, who is your child? Who could your child be? Because that is your child. And you're already a mother and already a father the moment that you conceive. So you have the ability to raise the next president. You have the ability to raise the doctor who's going to fight breast cancer. You have these abilities and capabilities already in you. And if you're already pregnant with a child, the child already has a life. There's already life there. So it's very sad as a society, especially in Canada, that so many are unwilling to even touch this subject, regardless of political stripe, because we are killing nearly 100,000 babies every year. And that's devastating when you understand what abortion really is. Like, abortion is not just tearing limbs from a child in the womb or snipping their neck for a late-term abortion and sucking out their brains, because that's the reality of what abortion is. Abortion is also taking an abortive pill early on in pregnancy and starving your child so that they pass through your system. You're starving your child so that they die. How is that compassionate or merciful? When we tell women, Canadian women, that we love you so much, we're going to be so compassionate to you and loving towards you that we're going to give you a pill to say, kill your child, because we don't believe that you're capable enough to have a career and raise a family. So there needs to be a lot more discussion around this subject and a lot more compassion and love, because so often, I know I've been painted in a very negative light, and others in my UN coalition, in various spheres, pro-life and pro-family spheres here in Canada and elsewhere, where we're painted as women haters. No, we're the ones who take care of the women before they give birth. And if they have an abortion, we're the ones who go and help them and love on them. And help them get jobs and take care of their children if they do choose to carry through their pregnancy. We're the ones who go and love these people, not the other side. The other side wants money and to retain power in Parliament. That's all they care about. Time and again, it all comes down to the money. And feeding into that perpetual cycle does not benefit women. It benefits men in the end. But also when I say that, I also say that knowing that at the end it doesn't benefit men, because it harms their character. So yeah, those would be my answers, plus a small tangent on the side as to your question.
Mattea, I really appreciate, I don't know if you've ever been told this, but you are an educator, you're a teacher. Do you know that? Are you aware of that? That you are just a natural leader?
I have not been told that.
You are a teacher. My grandmother and my mother, God bless their souls, used to tell me, Jimmy, you missed your calling. You should have been a teacher. And, it always was a negative way of saying, you haven't really reached your true potential. And it took me a while before I was like, I am a teacher. Like, just because I don't teach children in school and paid as a teacher, I am a teacher. That's all I do. I do it in the political realm as a candidate. I do it in my men's group. even though I consider myself to be the guy on Pablum because my men's group is a Christian group, and I mean, come on, I'm a horrible Christian. I just, I try to be better all the time, but it's a difficult walk when you're accountable to that one that sees all. So I want to shift gears a little bit, but I want to get back to the Canadian situation on sex-selective abortions.
For sure.
In you, I see an educator. I see someone that is a natural leader, a powerful woman, beautiful, well-spoken. In the political realm, we need that as a candidate. And I know
where you're going with this. I know where you're going with this.
I know you're really, you might be surprised. I know you're busy, but is there a political party in Canada that you can identify with now?
That's really hard, to be honest, because my faith was the thing that actually drew me. It shaped my policy decisions, and it still does. And it's benefited me beyond belief. So when it comes to a political party, not really. In Canada anyway, I know I used to work with a Conservative member of Parliament, and I'm still friends with many. I was born and raised in Saskatchewan, and I know many individuals in cabinet here as well as in caucus. But I really don't identify. I identify as a Conservative, but not a part of the Conservative Party of Canada anymore. And that's very sad to say. Even when there was a soft social conservative in charge of the Conservative Party of Canada, Andrew Scheer, to be honest, I never voted for Andrew Scheer on my ballot for leadership of the Conservative Party, nor did I vote in Erin O'Toole. And both have proven to be very, I don't want to say disastrous, but harmful to the conservative movement in Canada.
Disappointing, for sure.
Very, very disappointing.
And not only that, we need a strong opposition, and we need a strong second party to keep the ruling party in check, both when they have a majority or minority government, but also to keep them accountable at election time. And I feel like today's Conservatives are absolutely handing Justin Trudeau a majority mandate, even though so many people, half the country, I don't want to say hate, but they're not voting Justin Trudeau in. And with our election laws the way they are, you can achieve a majority government with 37% of the popular vote, i.e. Stephen Harper, who I wasn't a fan of. Now I kind of miss, because at least he had some strong leadership. Yeah, he did a lot of things I disagreed with, environmentally especially, and democratically he wasn't, the most transparent and open. And I don't want to turn this into a plug, but if you were active, I know guys that were active in getting Justin Trudeau elected as leader of the party. And what a disappointment he's been to those people that had to abandon the Liberal Party. And same comes with Max Bernier. There was 49% of the Conservative. If you were active in the Conservative leadership race, you could not miss Max Bernier. And he was right up into the 13th ballot. He was leading, and he had the support of 49% of the party. And, I've really ragged on Max because I've interviewed him a few times, and I will compare you to him in the way that politically he doesn't care about polls. No. He's not interested in what's popular. His position on any specific issue, whether it be guns, and he's at least given his candidate, he's not taking a pro-life, pro-choice stance in his federal platform. He's saying, you're my candidate. If you are respectful and you adhere to these 4 key principles, then do what you want. And I think he had a girl that's maybe transitioned over to the Christian Heritage Party, but she was a strong PPC candidate. And she said, I'm running and if I'm elected, I will bring this late-term abortion bill to the House. And he said, I'm fine with it. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, because we see so much of Greg Vesna, a friend of mine that started the None of the Above party, because they wouldn't put None of the Above on the ballot. Like, you've seen enough ballots to know a really democratic ballot has a choice at the bottom that says, I vote for none of these turkeys. And it's counted.
Exactly.
And in some races, believe it or not, None of the Above wins. And if that happens, then you have a new election, and all of the above are disqualified from that election because they're not good enough to win, right? So I say all that to say, you know, I ragged on Max in our early interviews by saying, dude, why didn't you just bide your time? Wait in the wings till Scheer was done, and overthrow the party and wait for your time in the light, rather than build this whole new party that's struggling to get 2%. You know, his goal is 5% next time. And I think he's electable in his riding. And if you're well known in your riding and well respected, miracles can happen no matter what the party. I'm well known in my riding, but I'm not all that well liked, I don't think. And I'm come from a very liberal, whether they vote PC or not, I think the majority middle is liberal at heart. But, you know, he just could not stand. They told him, your ideas are not welcome here. And so I wish he could have taken that 49% of the conservatives with him for membership, because he'd be a force right now. And he's going to try and run a full slate next time around. But when I look at Max, he says, you know what? If you go to the website and you don't like who we are, don't vote for us, because I'm not changing. My principles are what they are, and no poll, he's still flexible on issues, but for the most part, his principles stay unchanged. And to me, man, that just speaks to an integrity that I see is so lacking in politics today. It's such a fresh breath of air as far as like, no, I don't care what you think or what's popular. I think we need a moratorium on immigration until we get the employment situation checked out in this country. We don't need to increase legal immigration over 400,000 a year while Canadians are suffering. Yes, we need to be compassionate. But then he gets the label xenophobic, you know, racist, because he wants to close the border for a couple of years as far as immigration goes. So,
exactly. No, I was working with, again, a conservative member of parliament who was actually in that very same leadership race, and he did very well. But I understood what was going on with Maxime Bernier and many others, will just say, who were in that race, as well as in the Conservative caucus and the Conservative Party hierarchy. And it was impossible. It was impossible for him to stay. And so what else is a man to do? And I actually appreciate that Maxime Bernier didn't go out and smear, because he could have done a really good job at just smearing the Conservatives. Very good job. But he chose not to do that. He chose to be productive and do something in which he could actually elevate the voice of many Canadians through his party. So I do appreciate, and to be honest, even more so, I don't care that there's a PPC party out there. I don't think it's a bad thing, honestly, because they are willing to speak what the Conservatives are not able to speak. Because many Conservative Party politicians are told to toe the party line. It's just a fact. And they're not, for however much independence you might see from Conservative Party members, member of parliaments rather, they really are on a leash. Like they have to run everything. And I don't think that's a negative thing. They have to run everything past the party whip or the OLO, which is the opposition leader's office. But it comes down to a point where you're not even able to vote your conscience sometimes. And that's a very dangerous thing. No longer are you representing the people who elected you, you are representing a party. And that to me is nonsensical, especially in a so-called democracy as Canada. So I do appreciate Max Bernier. I've met him on several occasions. I know many PPCers. I live on the prairies, and so I'm surrounded by them, to be truthful. And they aren't crazy quacks like most people paint them to be. These are individuals who feel disenfranchised, who don't feel like they fit into the Conservative Party anymore. And the CPC has really changed, even since Stephen Harper's days. So at one point, Stephen Harper, actually my former member of parliament, Brad Trost, actually pushed the Conservative government to defund overseas abortions. And Planned Parenthood and Marie Stopes were two of the biggest beneficiaries of Canadian tax dollars, and they slaughter millions. And so that was something that did occur under Stephen Harper's government, which I totally supported. And Brad Trost was the MP I worked with. And now, Erin O'Toole said he would, during his campaign for leadership, he would actually stop federal funding of overseas abortions. But all of a sudden, after he's elected, he says, oh, no, I won't do that. I won't touch abortion. Like, we're just going to keep the status quo. And this is a real issue with politicians, that they feel emboldened even that they can do that, because it means that the grassroots is not speaking up and holding to account their elected representatives who are supposed to represent them, not a party structure, them. So I think we need to put the fear of God back into our politicians, into our governing bodies, in a very diplomatic and well thought out, respectable way. And there's many ways of doing that. But nonetheless, we have to do that, because they feel so emboldened that they can actually wear a crown and run the country as if they're a king, only accountable unto themselves. And that's what we're seeing in Canada right now with Justin Trudeau. But I think it would probably, at some point, even that could easily be said of a Conservative government too, if gone unchecked, and not loyal to the grassroots. So that's my 2 cents.
Tell us a little bit about the situation in Canada as far as, again, I had no idea that you could say, oh, it's a girl? Yeah, I don't want that. The numbers and the impact in Canada of what, educate us as to what the reality is on the ground, actually.
So it's very difficult. We know it happens. Both myself and other members of parliament, MLAs, MPPs, have had discussions with individuals from many different ethnic and religious background, individuals from different backgrounds, and they continually say that this is a huge issue, not only in their home countries, but now in Canada, where they have now settled. And so it's very difficult to ascertain any kind of numbers, because people don't have to report them. People don't have to say that women from in BC came in Vancouver, who is of whatever descent and wants an abortion because she's having a girl, or an abortion because she's having a boy. They don't have to necessarily report that. So putting into place different protectionary measures is essential, and reporting measures is really essential. But of course, the abortion industry finds this as a huge threat, because they would have to be accountable for what they're actually doing, if they're actually performing discriminatory practices and sexist actions or not. And so I can speak to maybe more the global aspect. That's where more my expertise is. But I know what's happening in Canada, and by higher numbers than what we could ever even probably think or imagine, because we are a multicultural society. And many people label me and others in this work as racists. But if we're speaking out for the vulnerable, I'm willing to wear that label, because where are their voices? They have no voice. And many of these individuals don't actually want to have a sex-selective abortion. And I've talked to a few individuals here in Canada who have had sex-selective abortions, but they don't want to have them. They're more forced or coerced into them to carry, so that they have many sons to carry on the family name. because it's very important in many different cultures in the world. And I can understand that to a certain extent. But at the same time, we're in Canada and we value all human beings. So, but on the global level, so the United Nations Population Fund, who are one of their mandates is basically to limit the world's population, have been coming around slowly to this issue, very, very slowly. And so I'm going to shorten their name to UNFPA. So UNFPA has come out with a report that roughly 1.2 million girls annually are targeted for sex-selective abortion annually. And that's astronomical in my mind, because those numbers, and like, honestly, that's such a skewed number because of the numbers that we get on a national basis from different countries, like China and India. That number is way, way higher. So it's probably more like 1.5 million girls every year are killed just because they're girls. And I want to again reiterate that, yes, this still happens to boys as well, where I do not neglect that in any way, shape, or form. But what happens is economies are drastically affected. Mental health is drastically affected. Food production is affected. This goes down to the granular. Sex-selective abortion affects so much of our everyday lives that we don't even recognize, especially in places like China is the best example. If they continued on this pattern, I mean, they already have a shortage of women in their country, and men are seeking out porn. Like, there's a huge porn epidemic in China beyond belief. Mental health crises are insane. Women who are allowed to be, or who are able to be born, there's a huge suicide rate in their country of women. So not only are women being killed in the womb, they're also killing themselves because they can't live with the pressures of normal life, because they're either hounded or there's immense pressures put on them just because they are women within their societies. So this affects a lot more than just a so-called abortion rights, which don't exist in international law, but nonetheless they're deemed that. So I hurt for these countries, but nonetheless for the people in these countries anyway, not for the government, but for the people, because they're forced into these situations in which they have to then deal with, where they don't have enough women to have their sons marry. Their populations are suffering greatly. Suicide is on the rise, which affects families, affects brothers and sisters and grandparents. Women, it devalues women in a whole. Like I stated earlier, Reggie Littlejohn, I encourage people to go look up her work. She's now not just helping women choose life for their baby girls and make it affordable so that they can do that, but also for elderly widows, because women across the board are degraded in their societies, and it starts in the womb and is shown on the outside. So these elderly widows are left to essentially die, because women who choose not to have women often choose to have baby boys instead of girls, again, so they have sex-selective abortions. And these boys are the ones who will then end up taking care of the parents, their parents, later down the road when they get married. And so if you have a girl, that girl gets married to a boy, and that girl is going to be of no benefit to you down the road, because she is then sucked up into one family solely and is no longer really a part of your family. So there's many external factors as to why this happens. But again, if you want to have a thriving economy, if you want to see true equality achieved, you're going to crack down on sex-selective abortion, and governments, countries worldwide are suffering from it.
I hear you being very deliberate and careful about your speech sometimes. I'm curious, what percentage of your speech do you find yourself self-censoring? Like, how much are you, and what are the topics that you really have to be careful about what you say publicly? Because
so as I've
just saying it could
deeper into, as I've delved deeper into my studies and into studies being my work, I've started to understand language in a different way. So it's not that I self-censor, it's that I want to use the proper terms and words, because words mean so much. Their meaning has a lot different meaning to the people I might be talking to at the UN, or to government leaders or policymakers, organizations, etc., than what it might mean to the general public. So for me, it's not so much self-censoring, it's wanting to communicate the right message in the language of the individuals that I'm speaking, because at the UN, there's this whole other language than what government policymakers use, and then what the general populace uses. So, but when it comes to different, probably the one subject that I don't touch on often, but if I do, I might be very cautious, and that's immigration. Because I view immigration in a very different light. But yeah, that's probably the one subject that I'm very cautious of. Otherwise, I just like to use any kind of language. And if I get painted with any kind of label, I will wear it proudly, because I'm doing my work. As a Christian, I will say I'm about my Father's work, and I live for an audience of one. I care what my family thinks of me, what my friends think of me, and that's about it. So I live with the consequences, if there's any.
Interesting. So political aspirations then down the road?
Everybody asks me this question.
We need you as a candidate.
I knew it was coming somewhere.
Yeah.
I ran when I was 20 for city council, and to be honest, I can do a lot more work without the confines of having a title of member of parliament or MLA, MPP, whatever it might have you. And I'm grateful to be doing the work behind the scenes than being out in front of the cameras all the time. I don't necessarily, I want to have a family someday. And so I don't want to necessarily be in the spotlight. I wouldn't care so much if my husband was, but myself, I want to create a home, and I want to be very intentional with my kids. And so I'm creating right now kind of the foundation, a network almost unintentionally, so much so, but so that I can actually be with my family. So I'm creating that structure now, and creating, even it goes down to how to make passive income now, so that when that time comes, I don't have to be in the spotlight. I don't have to be
Oh man, did we lose you?
think. And I say that from a very loving place, because many are my friends, and I work alongside many of them. So yeah, no political aspirations for me at this point.
Awesome. We lost a connection there for a little bit, so we didn't hear completely what you said, but I want to, for me, there's not a bigger problem in North America right now than the breakdown of the family. And I think removing fatherlessness, basically. But it all comes together in a way that, you know, Nietzsche said, God is dead, we killed him, and the blood's on our hands. And then he went on to lament about, you know, the next 1,000 years, how we would pay for that. Mm. And in the 60s in the States, you could get welfare, but only if there was not a man in the house. And
Thank you, Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yeah. I wonder what your thoughts are on getting back the success of the traditional family that's worked millennia. You know, I mean, the family unit is not new, like mother, father, and child. So in a really strange day that's being pushed by far left ideology, from what we're told in school and what we're taught in higher education and government bureaucracies, you know, there's not a day that goes by that Justin Trudeau doesn't take a shot at the patriarchy and the systemic racism that has invaded every institution in this great country. I am so tired of hearing, a counselor in my hometown we talked about offline, Laura Yip, she's a regional counselor, far lefty. Somebody I was quite friendly with when I was on the left stood at regional council and said, by virtue of the system being racist, even we anti-racists are racist by virtue of the system we grew up in. Give me an idea of what your thoughts are. Please leave me with us with a little bit of hope that it's okay to love a God. It's okay to say, you know what, the most successful setup for children is mother and father in the home.
Yeah.
How do we get back the traditional institutions that we've murdered and the ways of life that have worked over millennia? I mean, isn't that the only thing? Isn't that the only hope we have? Because, this idea that you're perfect just the way you are is such BS. You're not. You could be so much better. And we all know it. Because we all have 1,000 things that are so easy to do that would make us better people that we refuse to do on a daily basis. And I think it takes a toll on our soul and our mental health. But how do we get back to traditions that have been so successful without, being painted as this big, bad, scary, intolerant, I think about what's normal, right? What's normal to me is I love women. I love the way they move, the way they talk, the way, I could help elevate them if possible, if I'm in a relationship with them, or even not. Like, I can't imagine being gay. In fact, if I ever try to imagine, it's just like, so it's okay as a heterosexual man that's normal to me. And I get that if you're gay, it might be the very same thing for you, but gay is, I'm going to get killed for saying this, gay's not normal from the standpoint that there's such a small portion of people in society that are gay. Yeah, we've always had them, but it's not like the majority. And then trans as well. This idea of you've got drag queen story hour for grade 3s. What? I don't want. Listen, when my young daughter's 8 or 9 years old and she needs to have the talk, probably before boys, because there's a chance that they hit puberty before boys and very drastically obvious as to they're a woman now. I want to have that talk. Yeah. I don't want my school telling them that, you don't, we're not calling you boys and girls because that's labels and that's not. I mean, they're taking normal off skincare products now because it offends. Because, whoa, you got oily and dry, but you can't have normal because normal somehow offensive. Normal for the time. Yeah, it's been normal to have people that have struggled with their sexuality. But Milo, can you believe Milo's not gay anymore? And he's going for conversion therapy with his priest. And he's told his husband that his husband is now a housemate and he doesn't take part in sinful activity anymore. Now, Milo's nuts. I love Milo. But anyways, I'm blathering now, but I really appreciate your thoughts on how we get back to successful traditions that the lack of right now is ruining society, and I'm fearful for where it goes if we keep telling kids, and or we keep young black men in the States grow up here and cops hate you, man. They're hunting you. No, they're not. They love you for the most part. Yeah, there's some bad cops. Bad things happen, but it's not always racism. And that's, something I'm not afraid to talk about anymore. There's a very small demographic in the United States that commits violent crimes. They're all men. I can say that. But they're all a certain age. You can say that. But then they're also, 50% of them are a certain skin color that don't make up the majority of the population. In fact, the opposite. There are 3% of the population or less committing 50% of the crime. So anyways, I'm blathering, but I really appreciate your thoughts on how we get back to tradition and successful institutions that have worked for a very long time, that we're told now, oh no, you don't need a man in the house. We can be a gay female couple and our kids are going to be fine. No, they could be better with a man in the house. Anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the first thing I would say is we have to, if you're a guardian, if you're a parent, if you have any influence anywhere, which we all do, we have to first live out and then teach personal responsibility again. That's a huge, huge issue. If we don't teach that, we will decay even faster. We've already been on a steady decline as societies, Western societies anyway, but we will continue to be so. And then we also have to live out convictions, values. We can't just talk about them. We have to live them. And we have to present them to the world in a way which shows them the benefit of living, whether it's what I would call a set apart life, or what some might just say, living out your values, your convictions. But we have to actually walk the walk. We can't just talk it. And for many, it's just been a talk. And so, for example, many individuals my age have been driven out of the church or have no faith anymore, or have turned to Satanism or become Wiccans and witches. So the polar opposite of what they grew up with. And it points to the yearning within people's hearts. Everybody wants to serve, and everybody does serve something already, whether it's an addiction, whether it's a god of any sort outside of the God, or it's status. There's many things that we already serve, but what we serve is telling of what our hearts yearn for, the craving within us. And so many were driven out of the church or out of faith because there was no room to ask questions. And also, it was inauthentic. It was not the true gospel. And so from my point of view, people need to, if you're a family or an individual, you need to get yourself planted somewhere that actually values the same beliefs or has the same convictions as you do, or that challenges yours. Because if we don't live what we say or what we say we believe, why would anybody want to partake in what we actually do or don't do? So I would say personal freedom and actually living out what we believe. And also I would say form a community, get down to the granular, be a part of the grassroots. I have had many conversations with individuals who aren't gay, who have never been presented with my worldview. Never growing up, never from their parents' mouths, never in university, never in their careers. And so I would also say, speak what you actually believe. Don't be afraid of it, because in our day and age, even 20 years ago, it wasn't like this, but in our day and age, a lot of people have never been exposed to someone who actually holds true to their values and communicates what those values are, or actually lives out convictions. That's very rare nowadays. So when I had a conversation with a gay man who is my age, and he went, "Oh my gosh, you actually live what you believe." That's so compelling to me. And this was 2 years ago, so I was 23, and he didn't know what to do with that. So he actually started looking into his background of how did I become what I became? Because I grew up very similar to Mettea, but I'm broken. I mean, I'm a broken person, don't get me wrong. I sin, I need forgiveness all the time. But this individual went,
Oh no. Did we lose you? She's on such a roll.
Than somebody reading your story. But nonetheless, we have to, lost my connection. Can you hear me?
You're back. Yeah, we lost
okay, there
you
we
for
go.
a second.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
But nonetheless, speak what you believe, live what you believe, and form that community so that you can actually have more impact outside of the four walls of your home.
I really believe
and
that.
finally, I would just say, get your kids out of public education ASAP. Yeah. Please and thank you. Now, you there's no excuse for parents to keep their children in public education. No excuse. Many people come to me with the excuse that, well, I just can't afford to keep them home or stay at home with them. I understand that, but this is dire. If you want to protect your children, if you want to raise responsible adults, get them out of the public education system, because they are only being indoctrinated there. Education is nothing compared to what my parents went through. It's nothing compared to what the former generation was taught. And indoctrination was already coming in like by the droves when your generation, we're a part of different generations, but your generation was taught compared to mine.
Thanks for pointing.
Just gonna rub that in there, you know, tradition. But it's so essential. If you want to raise good kids, if you want to shape the future, because that's what parents do. Parents listening to this, you shape the future right now with your children. And so getting them out of that public education system, because they're only taught groupthink. That's all they're taught. You want to raise critical thinkers who have the same values as you. For example, I am constantly fighting against what the CSE, comprehensive sexuality education, because it's like critical race theory. It's the same thread, because everything undermines what you teach in your home. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's essential. Have a homeschool co-op where this is a practical example of how you can actually homeschool. You have 3 different families in your community where one day a week you stay home to homeschool your child. And then next day, someone else stays at home to homeschool. And you do this as a process. You grow and you learn. And there's so much material out there that there's truly no excuse. And this is where we also have to fight for school choice. Because if you had $30,000 a year, $15,000 a year in Canada to stay at home with your child in order to teach them school, as well as shape and mold them, you know what? The other side of the aisle hates that idea, which means that you should be paying very close attention to it as parents, as guardians, and as people who are going to raise the next generation.
Wow, what haven't we discussed? That went fast.
There you go.
It's 1:22. I want to keep you on time. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but just for the viewers that are watching, Paul Layton, he said, great question, something about the Libertarian Party. We've got a few viewers here as well. I know a couple things about you.
Uh-oh.
You're much taller in your Zoom videos than you are in real life. You are how tall are you?
I'm about 5'3.5". I'm small. I'm so small.
13 inches taller than you. And tell me you've got a good man in your life that you're working on making better, and that you have a future with someone, or are you just too busy for relationships?
I'm never too busy. This is the lie of my generation. No one's ever too busy for relationships.
Okay.
I have not found the right guy to enter into a relationship with yet. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot out there who want to enter into a relationship, but you know, I pray about every situation, and that individual has just not appeared yet. So I'm waiting. You know what? If there is a man out there who is bold and courageous, has convictions, loves family, and is willing to serve the Lord in a committed relationship, you know what? I am willing to take that to the Lord, every one of them. So.
Wow, how uncommon is it to have, you know, I was at a funeral for a friend of mine's son who whatever. I'm not sure exactly, but he's no longer with us. He was young 20s. And I was headed to the grave site. Like, this is, one of my best friend's son. And, I love this woman. So it was really tough. And we're pulling up to the grave, and I was with a buddy of mine, and I said, I don't know how we're on this, but I said, there's actually, like, good kids that grew up in Christian homes, that don't have sex out of marriage, that don't smoke and don't drink and don't swear. They listen to their parents. They respect the law. Like, it's not such a bad thing to grow up with Christian values. Mm-hmm. Look at how easily it can go wrong. It's going wrong all around us. So I will just say that it's so uncommon and society has created an expectation of young women in the dating scene that, well, if you want to be liked and you want to get the guy, then you're gonna have to be a certain way. And it's refreshing to hear you say, wow, if there's a guy out there that's got his, and I will say, Twitter marriage proposals don't work on ladies like Mattea Merta.
Please, no more proposals. Seriously.
Marry me is like my favorite tweet when I come across a young, strong woman that says things that she should be afraid to say. So I appreciate that. I'm glad I asked the question. Only, it's none of my business, but, we've had so many conversations, and I mean, this is our purpose, right? This is our purpose, to find the opposite sex and spend the rest of our lives together while we make babies and enjoy our grandchildren. And I really believe that so much of the anger today is women that subconsciously miss the connectedness and the meaning in their life because they don't have children. I feel it. I'm 52, never married, never had I still think, well, it could happen. I mean, I'm not saying it's too late for me. And I've been in committed relationships my whole life, it seems, like loyal, committed relationships. It didn't work out. And I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Like, I mean, I am, some would say, Jimmy, like, kind of obsessed with children. They're everything to me. Their innocence, they're just, my girlfriend's 5 years old right now. She's the love of my life. She cleans my soul every time I'm with her. And I had to tell her the other day, you know what? I really like hanging out with you. I think she said, why? I said, because hanging out with you makes me feel good.
Yeah.
So I feel this, and I think that's got to be more prevalent for most women if they pass the point of fertility and then, oh, well, yeah, I guess it's not in the cards for me because, Jordan Peterson said the other day, you cannot grow up until there's another person in the world that's more important than you. And that only happens with a child, your own child.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's like, oh, I'm not the center of the universe anymore. They are. And so, I think a lot of us are feeling that loss of connectedness and the meaning in life from having offspring. So, I don't know.
Well, if I can speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really quick. I know many men and women who never got married or were married, were in a divorce, have no children. Your life is no less significant, or your life still has purpose and meaning. It just because you don't have kids or a committed relationship does not mean that you decrease in value. And I would encourage anybody, including yourself, not to let your mental space go that direction, because if we really believe that value is intrinsic to every human person and we have dignity no matter what, I see you as my equal. I am much younger. I just hope that you never go down that mental space where I'm less valuable or my life is meaningless.
Interesting.
Because you have a lot to contribute to this world, a lot. And for anybody listening, you have breath in your lungs. You have the mental ability to absorb information and encourage and inform the world around you. That's equally as valuable to what I'm doing now and what I'll do in the future. So love on the people already in your life, because
amen, sister. Preach. That is like the perfect hopeful message to go out with, and that's why I love you so much. You just great communicator. I'm glad to be the first guy to go, geez, you're a real teacher, aren't you? If you've never heard that before, because you just come by it so much. So, we have our talents and our purposes, but there's one that is God-given. So thank you for your time. I always appreciate our conversations, and they're always hopeful. I always leave them feeling like I'm a better man for having spoken to you. So thank you for that.
Right on.
All right.
You're a good guy, Jim.
No, enough ass kissing. And I will release you from your commitment, and just thank you again and for the work that you're doing out there. I know that it's sometimes thankless, and but there are many of us that appreciate your work. So good on you.
Thank you very much.
All
God
right.
bless.
We'll talk in a few months again, okay?
Absolutely.
All right.
We'll make it happen.
Cheers. Thanks again.
Ready?
Bye-bye. Sign and leave. Well, I don't want to make you the host. Leave for all. Okay, see, I'm leaving now for sure. Okay, bye.
Okay.
That's a hard cut right there. Mattea Merta. Wow. Always impressed by that woman. Just gifted with the communication skills, and really, well, she's talking about things that many women don't talk about. Many are afraid to take a stand on. And I think she's promulgating a message that needs to be heard. It's okay. It's going to be all right. And so always grateful for the time that I get to spend with that woman on Zoom. Leighton, what's up? Thank you for your comments. Just scrolling them now. DJ, what's up? Who's this? VQ Mice Check 40. Oh, you want to become famous? I guess you're spam. I don't need to read that. Anyway, welcome aboard DLive, Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. If you want to become a patron, I have a Patreon account, and you should go over and become one. Patreon.com/free speech is where I'm at, and I figured out that I have to actually publish the page to be able to accept donations or contributions or monthly subscriptions. So I did that. Excuse me. And I have 2 patrons now. Last week I got 2 patrons. It's pretty cool. I wish I could hide the number of patrons because I'm not proud of it, but if you want to be like my third one, you can go hit me up on patreon.com/free speech. And if you'd like to contribute financially, you can always do it at realestate@teamniagara.ca on PayPal. That's realestate@teamniagara.ca on PayPal. Your contributions are always appreciated. You can find me on the fake book if that's where you're watching now. Hello. On the Twatter. Hello, Periscope. On YouTube right now, we're broadcasting as the channel Trew, Trew Tube, 2 words, Trew.Tube. I also have a Jim Fannin Show page. That's my 5th and 6th accounts because, well, YouTube, I've not been having very good relations lately. Not cool. I'm also on Gab. What's Gab? Well, I don't know. I'm there, though. MeWe? What's that? I don't know. I post there sometimes. Instagram? Not so active there, but the Jim Fannin Show does have a page, and so does Jim Fannin. LinkedIn. I've got almost 4,000 LinkedIn connections. TikTok, I think I have 2 followers maybe. I put a TikTok up every once in a while, but I can't go to TikTok because every time I go there, I'm gone. I fall down the TikTok black hole for hours and hours and hours. Sometimes it turns into days and weeks and months, and that's just not healthy. I'm on Parler. Parler's back. Don't post there a whole bunch. I got an invite to Clubhouse. Clubhouse? Oh, okay. I'm there. What's Signal? I'm there. It's a lot of accounts. Here's where you find Mattea Merta. Mattea Merta. Here's her resume. Oh, she writes for the Post Millennial. I forgot to say that earlier. You can find her here on the fake book, and then you can find her at Mattea Merta on the Twitter. All right, I'm getting out of here. Thanks. Thank you, Paul. I always enjoy my conversation with Mettea. DJ, thank you for your comments, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Peace. Love. Go hug your neighbor. They haven't seen you in a long time. Drop your digits on them and just say, hey, I've been thinking about you. If there's anything you need, I'm right across the street. Here's my number. You can call me anytime. And give them a hug. Give them some love. Give them a hug. But before you do that, please, I'm begging you, take that filthy diaper off of your breathing apparatus. It's poisoning you. I know. Spreading medical misinformation again. Well, that's what we do here. I'm out.